current situation is that they rely on any amount of money from the exchequer, and which sometimes and most of the time is not forthcoming. But with this fund that is ring-fenced will be used specifically for peace support operations. It will be used to ensure that the equipment that we take to these peace support operations areas are serviceable and 100%. Whenever you take equipment that is serviceable, you get something commensurate to that particular equipment that you have taken. Now that we have saying that this peace support fund, that the Kenya government guarantees 1 billion and 6 billion will be reimbursed by the peace support operations activities and mainly by the UN, then we are talking about a 7 billion fund that is revolving, that will be used to ensure that our activities in peace support operations are well taken care of. So I think this is a good idea. We have looked at it from all angles and find it fit so that we have this fund. I second.
Honorable members, sorry, I was slightly distracted by the chairperson. Honorable members, I now propose the question that the House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Public Finance Management National Peace Support Operations Fund Regulations 2023, laid on the table of this House on Wednesday, 21st June 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 24(4) of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, approves the Public Finance Management National Peace Support Operations Fund Regulations, published on as legal notice number 58 of 2023. What is your point?
Madam Speaker, you had allowed me to lay some papers and to move a motion with regard to the paper that I had requested for permission to do so. When we'll be ready. Can I do so? Just hold on. Just hold on. It is still the business of the committee. It's not different. It's the same committee on delegated legislation. Yes, it is business. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 29 June 2023.
To make his point of order there. I'm giving you the mic.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, the chair has moved a motion for the regulations of the peace. It was seconded. You put the question. This is the time for members to contribute, and we dispense off with that agenda. Then after that, he can table whatever he wants to table. Madam Speaker, this is a house of procedure. You can't say, we have come here to contribute to your motion, and then you want to table other documents. Give us time. We dispense off with the issue of the fund. Then you can table other documents. So, Madam Speaker, unless the chairman has extra powers to move a motion, put the question, then present papers, then after that he closes the debate himself. If that's the case, then we just go home and rest. We go sleep.
Honorable Junet, he was just on a point of order. We hadn't even heard what he was going to say. You're speculating. You want to proceed, Honorable Chepkonga? Yes.
Madam Speaker, you know, I had requested the substantive speaker, and he told me whenever you will be ready, because it is an important paper to lay. Just purely to lay, Madam Speaker. Honorable Junet, if you had allowed me just 2 minutes, it will not be subject of discussion. In fact, the paper, it will be very important for his constituency. Madam Speaker, I thank you very much. I see he has noted the agreement. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 29th June 2023. Report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the draft charter for the Open University of Kenya. Madam Speaker, can I proceed to move the motion?
You were laying the paper, weren't you?
Yes.
Pass it there. Yeah. Okay, you've done so, Honorable Chairman.
I-
You want to give notice of motion?
Yes, yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the draft charter for the Open University of Kenya laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 29th June 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 24(1) of the Universities Act 2012, approves the award of charter for the Open University of Kenya. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
All right, honorable members, I now call upon the honorable member for Kawanjiko. I can see you didn't want to contribute? I saw your name on the list. Okay, the honorable Karoli Amondi, member for Suba South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the establishment of the Peace Fund. I think Leo Tolstoy once said, the problem with an idle army is abundant idleness. And I think it is useful that our military gets engaged in international assignments. And if in that process they can also improve on the financial flows to the military, that would be a very good idea. I think this fund is long overdue because this kind of support from the UN has been available for a very long time. And I look forward to very transparent operation of the fund. I think that is why it has been isolated instead of being obfuscated in the normal military budget. It could also be a very good opportunity for our military to modernize its equipment, but also its operational procedures by constantly engaging with the United Nations in peacekeeping. It will also enhance our capabilities as a country for international diplomacy, and also to go around trying to strengthen our value systems as a country that loves peace and order. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Honorable Leader of Majority. Honorable Bui, I hadn't seen your cards, but you'll go next.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I rise to support these regulations, approve of these regulations. Honorable Speaker, it's indeed true, as the chair of the Delegated Legislation Committee has said and as seconded by the Vice Chair of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee, who is a seasoned officer in the military. And I keep telling him, Honorable Speaker, that unlike in the military, here in this House, there are rules other than the standing orders that they had in the military. And I am happy that the Vice Chair is now accustomed to operations of the House. The last Parliament, he had difficulty settling down in the House as opposed to what he was used in the military. But, Honorable Speaker, the Vice Chair will tell you that indeed, it is indeed true that over time, our country has been losing its premier status in the region as one of the countries that contribute immensely to the United Nations and other regional forces, even those for the AU, because one, we have very good and disciplined officers in our army, but the equipment with which they work with, some of the equipment may not be as good as it ought to be. Some were acquired when Major Bashir was still in the army. And you can imagine now that he has been out of the army for this long, and they are still using the same equipment that Major Bashir used when he was in the army, and also the Honorable Raso. Honorable Speaker, it then becomes important because when our officers, our very disciplined and good officers serve, either in the UN or other regional forces, like those that are serving in Somalia, those that are serving in DRC, Congo, we, in a way, also benefit as a country because if you are serving in the UN also gives money to pay for equipment, to pay for the officers' allowances when they are there. And you know, many officers who are serving in our military occasionally lobby very aggressively to serve in these units that are serving outside the country because it also becomes beneficial for them. And therefore, when the country loses such opportunities on account of us not having modern equipment, you have vehicles that are rickety and a little bit older than they ought to be, and also you don't have continuous training and capacity building for officers, then we also lose as a country. It's also important, Honorable Speaker, to have a separate fund for this money, because whenever money is contributed, for instance, from the UN and it goes into the consolidated fund, and it finds members of parliament demanding for CDF disbursement, or gracious ladies, women reps demanding for their GAF money, or even governors, Honorable Speaker, demanding for money to be disbursed to their constituencies, to their counties, or even, Honorable Speaker, that money comes at a time when public debt is up or due for payment. Then, and that money is in a consolidated fund, there is no way of distinguishing or creating a distinction between what money ought to go to the peacekeeping missions or that which should go to debt repayment. And you may find that this money may get into one pot in the consolidated fund and end up paying part of our debt. Others goes towards the settlement of our other national obligations, and leaving then our military officers in the state that I have just mentioned to operate with equipment that is almost obsolete. We leave them in a state where they are not doing capacity building. And basically, Honorable Speaker, you know, when our young men and women serving us in the military are out there in the bush, fighting to restore peace in the areas where they have been given work to restore peace, Honorable Speaker, they serve under very strenuous and difficult conditions and in an environment where we should not be putting them under any strain or stress, even for their families back home. Honorable Speaker, it's therefore important to have these funds in a separate fund where, one, we can ensure that they are able to access this money as fast as they need it, if it is to buy equipment, if they need money to equip the officers, if they need money to feed the officers out in the field, they have readily available cash. And therefore, it's important to have a separate fund, and I do support the establishment of this fund, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, Honorable Speaker, we have served, or rather our military has served in very many jurisdictions, from Bosnia to Somalia, and now in the region in DRC, Congo, and still a good number of them still in Somalia. And we are in a region, Honorable Speaker, where today our neighbors in the Sudan have problems. Honorable Speaker, as neighbors and as African brothers, we have a duty and a responsibility as neighbors to our neighboring countries to ensure there is peace in those countries, Honorable Speaker. And I would really appeal to the warring factions in the Sudan. We may not need to strain our regional forces, looking for forces to go and bring about peace, because it is all about politics in the Sudan, and I really appeal to the generals fighting there to consider the plight of millions of the Sudanese people who today are suffering, some are dying, and we've seen reports in the media with bodies all over the streets of Khartoum. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, because I see time is over, may I support as I plead with our generals in our neighboring countries to maintain peace, so that we do not also have to strain our forces to send them to other countries besides the countries that they're already in. With those many remarks, I support.
The Honorable Junet Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand to oppose these regulations. Madam Speaker, we are becoming a country that is going to be run through funds, special funds. Every small thing that we want to do in this country, Madam Speaker, we want to create a fund for it. Madam Speaker, it is very dangerous to govern a country through subsidiary legislations. Madam Speaker, peacekeeping missions never started in this country yesterday. It never started with Somalia. It never started with Sudan. It never started with any other place. It has been there since independence. Actually, this country is known for peacekeeping missions. They have done very well. Our soldiers have done very well. They have developed countries which were in turmoil and brought them back to peace. But Madam Speaker, when you see people doing funds like the way we are doing here now, there is always a fishy element in it. There are people who are targeting that money in a certain way. We have been here for some time. We know. These monies, we are budgeting, we are appropriating over 400 billion shillings every financial year to the Ministry of Defense. And they have been using that money very well. It has been audited. It goes through the auditing system. It goes through the Public Accounts Committee system. And they have been presenting their papers and their documents in Parliament. And they have been, all the time, they have been given a clean bill of health. Why create a special fund? Why do you create a fund if the people who are managing those funds have been doing very, very well for the last 5 years? When you create a fund like the NGDC, like GAF, you can understand, because those are special situations and circumstances that require direct intervention at the grassroots level. What are you intervening here? If you are given new equipment that you need to use, you can take them to the barracks. The military can handle those equipment. If you get funding, take it to the consolidated fund and we appropriate it directly to the Ministry of Defense. And then at the defense level, the accounting people there can use it on what is required for that money. Madam Speaker, I want to urge the House, let us desist this urge from the executive all the time to create special funds for special purposes. These special vehicles is going to hand this country one time. And you'll remember my statement on this house, in this house, Madam Speaker. Because these are separate entities that are removed from the State Department so that they can be operated separately under supervision of certain people. Madam Speaker, it is my humble request that let us allow the Ministry of Defense to operate as the way they have been operating for the longest time that is known. We have never seen any peculiar audit query. We have never seen any serious misappropriation of funds. We have never seen any wrongdoings in their accounts, in their books. Why should we go this way, Madam Speaker? So I want to urge the House that let us not be a country that operates through special funds. Every small thing we want to do, we want to create a special. So with those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I oppose.
The Honourable Member for Kadiani, Honourable Bui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the formation of this PFM National Peace Support Operations Fund for the Ministry of Defense. And first, I want to thank the Committee of Delegated Legislation. I'm a member of that committee. I've grown up in the military barracks of Kahawa and also Waterworks. And that is why I'm highly disciplined, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is very timely, Madam Speaker, because first and foremost, the fund is not requesting for a lot of money from the Exchequer. I think it is only about $1 billion. And then the additional amount will be about 6 billion. So the total amount in that fund will be about 7 billion. Madam Speaker, this is for purposes of enabling Kenya to be able to participate appropriately and properly in peacekeeping missions. Madam Speaker, historically, Kenya has been participating in these peacekeeping missions, but over the years, some of our neighboring countries, much smaller than us, even with smaller economies, have overtaken us as a country in participation. And one of the reasons is because we do not have enough equipment, we do not have modern equipment. Madam Speaker, this fund will help us in the following ways. One, it helps our members of our troops, the troops in the military, to be able to participate and actively get involved in peacekeeping missions. That keeps them physically fit, and it also helps them to keep abreast of modern warfare. Because, Madam Speaker, if we can keep troops in the barracks forever, and then one time, by God forbid, we get attacked from somewhere, if they haven't been practicing, they will not be able to keep up. But now, this is one way by which we keep our troops busy, because they are constantly out there participating. Madam Speaker, when Kenya participates in peacekeeping, or any country participates in peacekeeping, there are payments that are made for two things. One, the personnel, the other one is the equipment. Now, Kenya has been benefiting from the personnel, but the money that is paid to the personnel is paid directly to the participating soldiers. So nothing comes to the government, but the equipment is also supposed to be paid for. But what they do is that they look at the quality of equipment that you're taking out there. So if the quality of equipment is almost obsolete like Kenyans is, then they will not be paid for it. So in essence, we are sending troops with obsolete equipment, and we get money for the troops, and we get almost nothing as a country. So it's important that we be able to invest in this fund. Now, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the fund also enables the Ministry of Defense, will enable the Ministry of Defense to ring-fence the money that is paid for purposes of peace support. Because what happens is that the little money that we receive as a country is received and goes to become part of the consolidated fund. That means when the military requires to procure equipment, they must go there with a budget and request. And like Majority Leader has said, many are the times when there are too many competing interests for the little money, and so they end up not getting the money back. So, Mr. Speaker, it's important that we ring-fence these by providing them with a fund so that their money can go to that fund, and whatever money that is paid, they can always be able to access it and use it and roll it over even beyond the financial year. Finally, Mr. Speaker, my only concern would be if there would be any issue of corruption. And Mr. Speaker, as I've said, I know the military is one of those departments that has been very clean when it comes to matters of prudent use of public resources. And I believe that Kenya's military, which was grown long time ago by my grandfather, the late Honorable General Jackson Kimeu Mulinge, can continue with the spirit of discipline that they had, and we do not want to hear of any corruption cases. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Very well. Before we have the next speaker, let me acknowledge, and in the public gallery this afternoon, Murindu Highway Primary School from Gilgil, Nakuru. Remember, members, speaking on this motion, every member shall have 5 minutes, and the next to speak on this is Honorable Gitonga Murungara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was the first one to log in, so really I'm entitled to this. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation as regards the establishment of this military fund, which, in my view, is very important. First and foremost, Honorable Junet is not here. I would have informed him that policy decisions of a government are run through subsidiary legislation. You cannot run policy decisions based on the Constitution or on acts of parliament, because the Constitution itself makes a provision. The Act of Parliament provides how that provision is to be executed, and regulations actually do now carry out how the policies of that particular provision are to be enforced. Therefore, there is nothing wrong with the provisions we are dealing with now through a delegated legislation decision to establish a fund for our military. As it has been said, our military has been involved in very many peacekeeping missions. In fact, many people have been saying Kenya has a professional army, and sometimes they try to belittle that army, but the strength of the force is actually felt when we go out there to enforce peace missions, whether in Bosnia, Herzegovina, Liberia, Somalia, or anywhere else in the world. Most important is the fact that there are some monies that are received from international community as regards the peace missions we hold. And when that money goes into the consolidated fund, we have no way of ring fencing, we have no way of protecting the money so that it goes in for the purpose intended. We know very well that out there we do a good job. But as is going to be seen in the next motion we are going to debate, and I do not wish to anticipate debate, we are not doing very well in the country. Because of late, we have seen our soldiers being killed by terrorists all over. And it brings to question whether they are well equipped, whether the vehicles they are using are really military vehicles, or they are technicals, as they are called in Somalia, when they are doing their terrorist things. Let us ring fence this money Let us avail it for the peacekeeping missions. Let's put the money into proper use. I do agree that there should never be any element of corruption, pilferation, or misuse of the money when it comes into this fund. This is a fund meant purely for the military. We know that the prisons have 2 funds, which funds we are told have actually been misused. And we are looking into this. And we'll also look into this if there is any attempt whatsoever to misuse the money. Because if there is anybody eyeing this money meant for the military, may he be warned that this House will be on the alert and we shall be dealing with it. Mr. Speaker, allow me to support. Thank you.
Very well. Honorable Wilberforce Oundo Funyola.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this motion. That is the Public Finance Report, or the motion Public Finance Management National Peace Support Operations Fund, Regulations 2023. Honorable Speaker, I really have no objection to the fund, to the creation of the fund, but as I will reiterate later, is the issue of management, the issue of corruption, and the issue of misuse. Honorable Speaker, all over the world, especially when you go to the US, the military are accorded a lot of respect. Military men and women are exalted to an extent that are given priority even when they go to board flights or in shops everywhere. And that's the kind of respect and esteem accorded to the military in those other parts of the world. Unfortunately, in this part of the country, in Kenya, we do not really value our military as we ought to, in spite of the fact that they do so much for us internationally and locally. Honorable Speaker, the issue at hand here is the so many funds that are being created. The justification being given is to ring-fence funds given as reimbursement for used equipment and provide funds to support peacekeeping missions all over the world. However, Honorable Speaker, we hope and do hope that the national government or the executive does not intend in any way to find means and ways of probably defeating or avoiding the applications of the Public Finance Management Act in the management of the various affairs of this country. It would seem the idea here is that to create a separate fund so that you avoid the provisions of the PFM Act. We just hope that's not really the intention, but just being done out of merit to ensure that we have funds readily available to support. Because the call for peacekeeping is never budgeted for. It can come anytime. And therefore, on that account, we would need a dedicated account to make sure that we support our soldiers wherever they go. Honorable Speaker, of course, the issue of preparedness of our soldiers has always been has been a point of discussion. Many times, you find our soldiers have been killed, like what happened in Somalia. We report every day our soldiers being killed in operations, even within this country. As we reported last week, there were many that were killed in Lamu. Again, it was also reported along the Garissa Road, there was an ambush. This brings into question, are our military very well trained? Are our military very well equipped? Are our military very well resourced with information in terms of intelligence information to avoid falling into traps with ragtag armies like Al-Shabaab? This is the kind of discussion we just hope and pray that this fund we are creating and the contribution will come from UN or whichever body will continuously improve. First of all, the equipment our soldiers are given to protect their life as they protect our life, and secondly, to improve morale of our people our soldiers as they do their work. Honorable Speaker, this is an important matter that requires serious consideration. When any case will be subject for audit, we just pray and hope it has not been earmarked for somebody else to manage the same. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
The Honorable John Kawanjiku.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this bill, and especially whereby we agreeing with the chairman or the leader of the delegated committee that we need to consolidate funds for the National Peace Support Operation. So that at least, Mr. Speaker, when our young people, our brothers, our sisters go outside there for peacekeeping purpose, they'll be able to be taken care of. And especially when the fund is addressing very critical issues, because the moment they go to fight, the moment they go to DRC, like now they're in DRC Congo, we have sent the same military people, we have sent them to Somalia to try and help even our neighbors in ensuring and also making sure that, they coexist with each other. We must also make sure that we create a fund that will be able to take care of them. It is quite unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that you realize even if they go to DRC and maybe some are injured, there is no fund to take care of them. And I therefore support to make sure that we separate the operations of the military and the operations of the whole defense system by these peacekeeping missions and support and the people who are going for peacekeeping, so that at least they can have a special attention. Because with the way that this country has been managed for many years, you realize, Mr. Speaker, if we put that resources under the same bracket with the normal operations of the KDF, you realize that these people may be disadvantaged because the process of making sure that they get equipment, the process of making sure that they are well taken care of is so tedious and bureaucratic, Mr. Speaker. I therefore support and I insist that we have seen incidences whereby, even after some times that the money has been put aside, the issue of corruption must be dealt with. We must make sure that the people who benefit from this fund are the normal people, are the same people who go outside there for peacekeeping. And as my colleagues are saying, we have not had incidences in our country whereby we have to use the military. We have been having so old equipment that some even from 1990, from 1982 coup, we have not experienced any military issue within our country. So you may realize that even they don't understand or they even don't know whether these equipments can really function in case of any external aggression within our country, Mr. Speaker. We don't know whether we have the military capability to deal with this external aggression, Mr. Speaker. And I therefore support, let these people go outside there, let them gain the experience even of how to fight the war, because in our country we haven't had those incidences. And number two, we are able to upgrade their equipment so that in any case that they go and come back, those equipment can continue to be used within our nation, within our boundaries of our country, Mr. Speaker. And we must put, strict measures that this fund must be well taken care of, Mr. Speaker. The issue of corruption must be dealt with, because we don't want to get ourselves into a position whereby we set aside the fund, and after we set aside the fund, that the money has been misappropriated. When these people go to fight and come back, the money that is supposed to take care of them, the money that is supposed to, to upgrade their military, equipment is not there, Mr. Speaker, because it has been misappropriated. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must support them and make sure that we also tighten the loose areas, that in any case that money will not be used apart from the people who will go for peacekeeping, Mr. Speaker. The other thing that the bill is also, or the proposal that is also talking about, is also making sure that, we reinforce and make sure that we support and encourage as many military men. In our country, we have also got incidences whereby we have seen some serious vehicles, military people, getting attacked by the Al-Shabaab, because we have been using the same old models of vehicles. We have witnessed in Garissa, we have witnessed the other day in Lamu, Mr. Speaker, and because we don't have new military equipment that can be able to deal with the IED, the bombing, and even how to detect whatever is happening within there, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I support, we need to reinvest this amount of money and make sure that we upgrade our military people and also support them when they go for peacekeeping. I therefore support, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Yes, the Honorable Francis Sigay. The Honorable Francis Sigay Sotik is in the house. Him not deciding to be in the house. Could we have the Honorable Bashir Abdullahi Mandera? Very well. And therefore, we move to the Honorable Kibet Komingoi. Proceed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the regulations that have been proposed by the Ministry of Finance, the Peace Support Operation Fund that is being developed through the Ministry of Defense. The major thing, and in the major discussion that we must be discussing as Kenyans, is how updated is our military, how updated is our equipment, how trained are our officers, and what opportunities exist for our officers to be able to contribute to national development in supporting the peace missions around the world. In supporting these regulations, Mr. Speaker, we must be cognizant of the fact that we are giving opportunities to our military, and we may even include the police in future to be able to protect and offer support to the variety of situations that may arise within the global world. And in this, we will be able to provide, modernize, train, and be able to improve our military to be able to take care of themselves and be able to have the equipment ready and to be deployed. If you look at the scenarios that are happening within the country where the military has been deployed, particularly along the border of our Somali border, along the coastal region, even in Lamu as recently as last week, some of the equipment that have been deployed to those areas have actually been the equipment that do not protect our military. With this fund, we will be sure that our military will be better equipped, our military will be better trained, and therefore we will be better able to respond to any circumstances within the borders and outside the borders to be able to expose our personnel to the things that are happening and be able to contribute to the peace of the earth. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
The Honorable Joyce Kamene.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. I wish to rise and support this motion that has been brought by the delegated legislation, where I am part of this committee. It is to support the National Peace Support Operation Fund. This fund will help provide support for the participation of our defense force in the neighboring countries where there is conflict. Indeed, we remember very well, and when we look back, how our defense and our military has been strong in the past years. But of recent, we find that the equipments that they use are just the old ones. And this fund will give them the innovation and the face that our defense force requires so that it can be up to the standard with the other countries. I am sure the lost glory that has been there will be rekindled when we are able to pass these operation funds for our military. And as we've had the other members contributing, we look forward to, and we pray that the ministry, the defense ministry, will make sure that corruption is not envisaged in these funds, and I rise to support. Thank you.
Very well. The Honorable Ridikiri Mugambi. And honorable members, order Ridikiri. Honorable Ridikiri, I can notice that you are not actually appearing on the screen, so check your cards if you want to speak on this. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this proposal that has been brought by the Committee on Delegated Legislation, and want to state that this is one of the best ideas that has come, and it has come the right time. Madam Speaker, Kenya is known internationally as a peacekeeping nation. Mr. Speaker, I study as the president of Good Governance and Democracy, and Mheshimiwa Kakai is the president of peace and security on the 12 countries that form the Great Lake Region Conference of Parliaments. And one of the items that has come up during our meetings, like the last meeting that we had in Juba, is that all the forces that are sent to DRC, that are sent to Somalia, that are sent to Sudan, they are well equipped. And therefore, from that perspective, it is my statement that we need to support this initiative of creating a special fund. There is nothing wrong with this fund. I could agree, I could not agree. The management of the fund could be an issue. But I think Kenya has reached a point where now we need to be prepared as a country against external aggression, and also when we are called upon by the international community to offer peace services, we need to be prepared. Mr. Speaker, when we are talking about peace support system, we are not only referring to the KDF, because it's a whole chain of other support factors that the people on the ground require. Mr. Speaker, you also know when there is a peace mission, it's a combination of KDF, regular even police services. They are over surveillance support, who offer support for them. And it becomes very difficult sometimes if they are tied by the strictness of the supply chain. So it's my conviction, Mr. Speaker, that these people, they require a fund that they can directly control and account for. Mr. Speaker, I lost relatives in the infamous tragedy in Somalia. I lost 2 relatives and I lost a neighbor. And they told me this attack happens at night. And he said, I mean, the guys who were there, the people who came, they said one of the weaknesses that they have is night surveillance equipment. These people require serious technology updates. They require transport equipment, which are modern equipment. They require training. They require monitoring equipment, which are essential for their operations. Mr. Speaker, it is common knowledge when you see some of our equipment moving along the roads, you realize these are not modern equipment. The only thing that causes people to panic is the color mentally. But the suitability of this equipment is not the best. So, Mr. Speaker, it is my conviction that this fund, if well utilized, is going to cause serious preparedness of our mentally, of our peacekeeping forces, which include even the police, and the civilian, and if it is used properly, it's going to be of value to the services. If Junet was here, I would have asked him, peace mission is not done in Kisii, where they walk in and out. It is out there. And I asked him to change his mind, because he's going to be a victim from the other side. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order? Though he's already finished. So
it's member in order of trying to profile Honorable Junaid by talking about peace mission in Kisii. I mean, he was giving some eloquent contribution to the thing, but you see, in order now to impugn, to profile somebody who is not even here. Mr.
Very well, but it's already done, and therefore I'm not sure that you are the next one. You are actually the next one to speak on this, so proceed and speak.
Thank you.
Instead of having a point of order.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion on the National Peace Support Operations Fund. The most important thing is that the creation of this fund is going to help us fund these peace operations. You are aware, Mr. Speaker, that we do not budget for peace operations. These are emergency things. These are things that just come. And as a member of the nation, of United Nations and member of African Union, this country partakes in peace operations. Actually, we are the premier peacekeeping country in our region. So I support the formation of this National Peace Support Operations Fund. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, is I would like this fund not to be domiciled only in the military, because peace operations is not about only the military. In most of the peace operations we have sent combined forces like the police. We have sent even prosecutors in some countries to help them prosecuting crimes. So as we think about operationalizing this public finance, this National Peace Support Operations Fund, we should also be thinking of having people from the other disciplined forces in the membership of whether we are creating a board or whatever entity is going to operate this fund. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Very well. The Honorable Beatrice Adagala.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also want to talk about this bill. I want to support the delegated committee about it, because keeping in mind, Mr. Speaker, sir, the military do a lot of work, and especially when they go out to keep peace, they need to be equipped with the current and modern equipments and other things that are needed, and especially about their welfare. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill is the right bill, and I'm very sure I want to support it strongly so that the military can be comfortable when they go out to do other duties, like when they leave their families too behind, they must be catered for. So this is a good, noble idea by the delegated committee. I think this fund is important like any other funds. We have the CDF, we have the GAF, we have all sorts of funds. So this is timely. Mr. Speaker, we have to support this bill. I stand here supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The Honorable Charles Nchonke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to support this motion for the Public Finance Management National Peace Support Operations Fund regulations, and as published under legal notice number 58 of 2023. I invite us, Mr. Speaker, to think of Kenya, which is known to be the first in many respects. Kenya has the best athletes internationally. Kenya is a superpower, economic superpower in the region. People come here to study our economic systems, our financial systems, our governance, the way we run our public affairs. Many of the young nations in the region have come here to learn how we do it. So much has been given to Kenya. So to those much has been given, much is expected. Can you think of a situation of a superpower, regional superpower, Kenya that is, call upon to discharge an obligation in a peace mission, and we say we cannot? We know that we are very good men and women in our forces. So what sometimes lets us down is the equipment, and we have an opportunity of addressing this matter. This is not the first time that we'll be creating a fund. Funds have been created. We have over 200 funds in this country, and we have the technology, we have the knowledge of putting in place systems, internal controls, and everything else to ensure that these funds are properly managed. In any case, these regulations come under the auspices of the Public Finance Management Act, which has got enough safeguards of all public funds. This is just like any other public fund, and therefore, if there are any weaknesses that are going to be noticed along the way, unfortunately, in public financial management or accounting or financial management, sometimes the controls come to after the bad things have happened. But that's not to say we cannot get any funds to be able to be more efficient in providing the technology, the logistics, the equipment that our forces require. Now, if Kenya is first in many respects, and we want to retain that status, we must pay a price for that, so that whenever we are called upon to go and provide services in a peace mission, we should be ready. We cannot just be ready with the men and women who are well trained, but we must give them the equipment. You can't go to war without equipment. And this fund seeks to serve that purpose, and we cannot deny them that. Besides, we are putting regulations around to govern this so that whenever it's required, it's done properly, and that the money is properly accounted for efficiently, so that we don't have men going and the equipment, or men not able to go to the battlefield without equipment. So with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support that we approve these regulations. Thank you.
Very well. Next to speak on this is the Honorable Paul Nabuin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I rise to support the motion. Mr. Speaker, our military has done very well in the peace missions that have already taken place. The recent peace effort in DRC, the feedback that we get from there is great to our military, because there is positive, there has been a positive effort in trying to create peace and, bring harmony in some parts of DRC as the most recent. So in support of this fund, it is important that the military, in the effort to carry out these missions, as colleagues have put it, the equipments that are sourced for efforts in peace missions and even used within the country are those equipments that are operational, because we've got stories that some of the military equipments that our KDF have used before have been substandard, to the extent that they have not been able to secure our men and women in the military while they are in service. So with that short few remarks, I support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Farah, Member of Parliament, Fafi constituency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my points to this bill. I rise to support the motion and the bill in front of us, which is meant to support peace operations and peace operations in the neighboring countries or wherever it is. My contribution is that when I read through this bill, it's a matter of importance to me because I know the Kenyan military forces, the kind of operations they are undertaking in the neighboring Somalia, which I border. I have a large contingent of Kenyan military personnel and officers and gadgets stationed in my constituency. One of the things I've noted down in that is that most of the equipments used by our military personnel are a bit obsolete and not the standard of international military gears. A good example is the kind of vehicles they use for operations is Toyotas and Mitsubishi lorries. And these are not, to my understanding and what I normally see, is not the standards of international military, because most of the militaries I see is Top Gear gadgets and mobile operations, like they use something like jeeps and SUVs of high level. If you see even the kind of military armors and equipments they are wearing, all clothings, it's not also of the same standard. I attribute this to the fact that maybe our budgets for those operations is small compared to other countries who do military operations. What I know is that, and what I understand, because most of the boys from my area serve in these peace missions in Somalia, and you happen to hear their stories about remunerations and the gears and the operations they're undertaking. It's like they are being capped because of finances. I believe this bill will be of substance to make sure that our boys and girls in uniform will be rated highly in the world, will give a picture of real relevance and top gear level of personnel and equipments. Another thing I support this bill is, the reason I support this bill is that it's not only a mission of guns and vehicles, it's a mission of winning the hearts of the areas, of the people of the areas we are doing operation. And winning those hearts require infrastructural developments and community supports. Most of these areas in southern Somalia, for example, where Kenya operates, Lower Juba, areas deprived of simple social amenities like medical facilities, water sources, schools. If you see the international militaries, peacekeepers, when they're stationed in a country, like for example, US in Iraq and Afghanistan, though I'm not saying we'll reach that level, the kind of service they offer is not only a service of guns and military equipments, but medical personnel assistance, hospital, provisions of drugs, drilling of boreholes, doing of roads. All these require money. And our budget is still constraints. We can see what's happening. So by having a sufficient or amicable amount of money to support that, this will help us win the hearts and mind of the people in the area we are doing operations, like Lower Somalia. Also, the other things these military operations will help us is peace building itself, whereby maybe a lot of elders and communities, a lot of talks, workshops will be held in those areas to facilitate coexistence and peaceful commiserations. So I support this bill because I believe our operations in those areas, in areas we'll be doing peacekeeping, will be rendered areas of high substance, of value, and our military personnel and equipments and positions in the world will be seen as one in the same level as of standard and up-level countries like Malaysia and maybe Japan and those areas. This is where we are heading. So we left behind the issues of substandard and where we look for support from international donor communities to support even our military, but we will be able to finance our own military operations in and outside the country. I rise to support this motion. Thank you, sir.
Honorable Memusi Kanchori, Kajiado Central.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And let me start by also adding my voice to those of my colleagues in support of this legislation by the delegated committee. Honorable Speaker, I sit in the Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee, and I've served in that committee for a period of 3 terms. And Honorable Speaker, I must say that our disciplined forces are one of the most disciplined in terms of financial management. Honorable Speaker, and this has been seen when there is a crisis in any of government departments. For example, Kenya Meat Commission, we called upon the military to step in and assist in reviving Kenya Meat Commission. And that was done, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this fund is one that will go a long way because the military has been responsive, not just internally, but also outside the country. Recently, we approved our military forces to go to Congo. And Honorable Speaker, this potentially strains Treasury because we required about 7 billion urgently for this mission. Kenya has earned a good reputation in peacekeeping around our neighbors. Honorable Speaker, this fund seeks to release the pressure that Treasury gets whenever our gallant forces are required to intervene anywhere. Even locally, Honorable Speaker, when our military were required to support our police forces in the north. Honorable Speaker, if this fund was in operation, we would not have been straining Treasury. Also, Honorable Speaker, when the UN is giving us as a country money for peacekeeping mission, this money is sent directly to Treasury. And Honorable Speaker, we are aware that the country is straining financially. So when such monies are received, you find that the government has to prioritize, and that money is put where there is immediate need. So, Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this fund. The military have proved their financial prudence. They have never been brought in bad repute. The money that we allocate them as a defense committee has always been put into very good use. I support. Thank you.
The Honorable Kuria Kimani.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this motion on the consideration of the public finance management, the National Peace Support Operations Fund regulations of 2023. Honorable Speaker, all the speakers that have spoken before me talk about the accolades of our disciplined men and women. We talk about how our defense forces is one of the most celebrated forces in the world because of their efficiency, of their discipline. We have seen quite a number of scandals happening in other sectors of our human resource in this country, but very little, if any, in our Kenya Defense Forces. But maybe we need to ask ourselves, would they say the same of their living standards, of their working environment, on their remuneration, on the equipment that they use at work? Or do we just have very good human resource, but without elaborate decision and putting resources to making sure that these great men and women have the most conducive work environment? And that is therefore why the operationalization of this fund cannot come at any more handy time in this country, Honorable Speaker. We have seen great presidents across the world have their children, their sons and daughters serve in the army. I could mention Zachary Taylor's son, or Robert Lincoln's, or Roosevelt's 4 sons that were served in the army, among the sons of many distinguished leaders in the world. You know, for President Abraham Lincoln's son, Robert Lincoln, he actually left Harvard University and went straight to become an army person. But maybe how many of us, including us in this house, would send our sons and daughters to our army? How many sons and daughters from, if I call them privileged families, would want to give up Harvard to go and serve in the army of this country? And that question, therefore, Speaker, tells us that we really need to invest our resources. These are in our Kenya Defense Forces, making sure that they live a good life, that they have a good working environment at their workplace, and to make sure that we avail the best resources in terms of equipment at their disposal for the operations. And also, Honorable Speaker, we've seen other countries take care of the retirees of the army, either when they retire or when they get injured at war. But, Honorable Speaker, we've had cases of some of our officers who have lost their speech because of blasts that has happened when they are at war. But, Honorable Speaker, hardly anything being done to help them restore their speech. So you have great soldiers who served this country in a very great way, but because of noise pollution and them being exposed to those blasts, then they lost their voice, they can't speak. And, Honorable Speaker, there isn't a lot that's being done in that particular sector. What you've seen is an attempt to recruit speech therapists in the army, but those speech therapists that work at the KDF hospital are the lowest in cadre in terms of their job group. And therefore, we've not been able to get or to attract the most qualified speech therapists to help these wounded soldiers to recover their speech, Honorable Speaker. And even as we look at making sure that we facilitate our army with the equipment, we really need to consider the well-being, the health, the mental health, the working conditions of these great men and women we really celebrate today for their great work, for their great discipline, and their great resilience in our forces. And in that, I support, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Agnes Parejo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this motion on setting aside funds to support our troops that take care of our country from outside, and they also need to compete with the rest of the country. So I find it important that it is important for us to have funds that are going to be set aside for the sake of buying equipment for our troops. Because there is no way we can send them out there and they don't have equipment to compete with the other troops outside there. And we not only need to look at the forces outside, we also need to look at our military troops here in Kenya. Because we also want to make them comfortable. Because if they cannot take care of our boundaries here in Kenya, then we find that our enemies will get a way of penetrating and coming to our country. So I think it is important for the funds to be set aside to make sure that the troops that go outside for peacemaking missions are comfortable and have all the equipment that they need. Because we hear so many stories, and these are stories that are sad. When we lose our people because they miss or they lack equipment that can protect them, then I think we shall be failing as a country. So I stand to support. Thank you.
Honorable Paul Biego. Honorable Paul Biego is in the House. In his absence, Honorable Kimei. You have a microphone there.
Yes,
Proceed.
yes. Honorable Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to stand and support the motion and appreciate the Committee of Delegated Legislation for bringing in this motion concerning the National Peace Support Operations Fund. Honorable Speaker, our disciplined forces, the military, do so much to our country and the countries they are sent to. Honorable Speaker, they protect the civilians, they actively prevent conflicts, they strengthen security, they do so much. These are the people we celebrate a lot. These are the people who leave their families. They are given themselves fully and wholly to serve humanity. They are not only serving our country, they are serving the people of the world. For Kenya to be known internationally and even to be at par with other countries, our discipline forces play a very vital role. In this case, I support more funding to them to have less risk in their lives. These forces needs improved and modern equipment. In this time, in this era, other countries have improved equipment. We cannot compete with them in quotes favorably if we are using the old equipments, and therefore our forces will be celebrated more in the world if we improve their equipment. I would also say that their working conditions need to be improved, and this cannot happen if more funding is not added to them. Their families, who have also supported them and given them to Kenya and to the world, needs to be supported and to be looked into, needs to be compensated in a way. Our forces, the discipline forces, are away from their families for long. And therefore, I also ask us to look into that as we look at their conditions, having modern equipments and the like. Let's also have part of this funding go to their families. And this one can only happen if their remuneration is improved, if their living standard is also improved. Honorable Speaker, when our forces are out there, as a woman, as a mother, I know their families are not at peace. They live in fear of the unknown and sometimes of the known. But when they have modern equipment, they feel that they are more safer. And as we continue praying for them, I pray that our troops be supported fully. And I cannot miss to say, Honorable Speaker, that the funding that today we are saying should be added should be used prudently. Any form of corruption, we say no. But I know this ministry actually works hard, and whatever is given to them, they use it wisely. With that, Honorable Speaker, I support, and I believe with more training and adding capacity, they will be able to represent us well in the world. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. With that, I support the motion.
Abraham Kirwa of Mosop.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this mission on National Peace Support Operations Fund. Mr. Speaker, it is high time as a nation that we truly consider and support our troops as they go out on peace mission operations. Most of our youth and our young men who are enrolled in the military sacrifice so much as they look out for the peace of this country. And as such, we should not really be talking about should we approve or should we not. This fund should be a fund that should have been established a long time ago, Mr. Speaker, so that their interests when they are out of this country, let's say in Sudan, Somalia, or the other countries where they're going to make sure that the peace is maintained, they should never worry about where the funding is going to come from. And I want to suggest, even if we're going to approve, and we will approve this, Mr. Speaker, we make sure that it's ring-fenced, that the funding that will be used to make sure that the operations of this, of our soldiers out there is specifically meant to support those who are going out for peace missions. Kenya has been considered as one of the top countries in peace missions in Africa. And as such, we should continue to remain there. Now we've been overtaken by several other countries. Kenya has fallen from number 1, that it used to be the number 1 country in peace mission keeping, to now we are about almost 7, 8, or 9. So as such, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion that we should approve the funding to allow our troops to be well prepared, to make sure that we have the up-to-date equipment that is going to help them to stand out there, and to make sure that they will never worry about the funding. I know that the United Nations has continuously supported, but for some reason or another, they are delayed.
Order. Honorable Mwafrika, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order 95. Since all members are in support of this motion, that you can call the mover to reply.
Very well. And I think at this juncture, a member has risen from his place and has stood on standing order number 95 that the mover be called upon to reply. Honorable, you may finish your speak, after which we call the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, I continue. So I stand to support this motion, Mr. Speaker, as many of our colleagues have supported, that Kenya should always be number 1 when it comes to peace mission keeping, because to assure ourselves that our region is safe, we need this funding. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the motion.
Mover, is the mover in the House? Yes, Honorable Bayer, proceed.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the move of the motion.
Order, there are 2 members up standing.
Oh.
Bayer, you may continue.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, these regulations as tabled in reply are important regulations that will give our peacekeepers an opportunity to be able to operate and be aided and be given funds as money is available. As you know, Honorable Speaker, that a lot of what we have, operations of government, are by the Public Finance Management Act, which sometimes may restrict usage of funds because of the tight procedures that are involved. But these regulations allow our peacekeepers, allow our soldiers, allow those who have fallen, allow those who have been injured, and allow those that are going on missions to be considered for financing. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, I would like to reply and request that this House approves these regulations. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. We shall defer the question, putting of the question on that matter until the next session. But honorable members, the time now being 5:31, remember the Honorable Speaker did approve a motion by Honorable Member Bernard Kitur, MP, on adjournment on a definite matter of urgent national importance regarding the insecurity in Lamu. Is the Honorable Member in the House, Honorable Member Bernard? You have 10 minutes to move. You will have no seconder, and every member speaking on this motion will have 5 minutes. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I would like to move the motion to adjourn on a definite matter on urgent national importance regarding the insecurity in Lamu. That is pursuant to Standing Order 33-1, where I seek leave the adjournment of the House for purposes of discussing a matter of urgent national importance regarding the ongoing incidences of insecurity in Lamu County. Mr. Speaker, we've been witnessing desperate attacks of suspected terror groups and clandestine armed gangs in certain parts of the country, particularly in Lamu and Garissa counties. Recently, innocent residents of Salama and Juhudi villages in Lamu were treated to heinous and brutal attacks that have sincerely caused anxiety and that have gripped Kenyans at large with regard to the safety of the country. These terror groups also attacked KDF forces, and I would really say probably the security forces, using IEDs. Honorable Speaker, we just got some of this information through the media and alternative sources as well, of about 5 or more locals who were killed in the same attacks. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I rise to, first of all, sincerely condole with the families of those who lost their loved ones, of the police officers or security officers, through these cowardly, heinous acts. Of course, I would like to also stand in to also condole with the families of those who are now agonizing, those who are broken families, of course, those who have been injured, those who are in hospital, those who are now suffering emotionally, psychologically, the children, the family units have been broken. And therefore, as leaders of this country, it's important that the people of Lamu and the other regions who are going through such pain to know that as leaders and as leaders of this country, we feel their pain and we condole with them. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I would like to appreciate, first of all, the work that the government has been able to do in regions that at the earlier part of this year, particularly in the North Rift, where there was serious banditry, but the government has been able to contain it to a greater extent and bring in development in those regions. And I feel what is now happening in Lamu, as we urge the government to really now put its foot in those areas, because the effect and the impact of these heinous, cowardly acts by these terrorists has really affected the economic development or the ongoing development activities in many parts of Lamu. Equally, even the education and the social lives of the people in that region have seriously been affected. And therefore, it is important that we also, as leaders, as a government, as our government also takes this a bit seriously, because we are made to understand that as we speak right now, there are many internally displaced Kenyans in that part of the region, in a number of villages, who are now living in the schools that are there. I would like to appreciate the fact that we've had the government's presence in that place. However, when we saw some of those gory pictures of IED having exploded on vehicles that the security officers were using, it is our wish that the government invest more in armored vehicles in those particular areas when they are doing their continuous surveillance on those places where they are a bit porous. Mr. Speaker, I would wish as well to implore that not only the armored vehicles, but any other very important armaments that the security forces that are working in that areas be supplied with, so that we do not see what we've been witnessing of the recent past on those officers who are really injured using the IEDs. As I engaged also the people from those regions, Mr. Speaker, one of the greatest concerns is that there is need for government to also focus in development in the Lamu East and Lamu West. This is because most of these attacks that happens on IEDs, they happen not on tarmac roads. They happen in those roads that are, they are earth roads, where these people are able to implant these deadly devices just to cause terror and horror amongst the people. But of course, they won't win. There are other issues also that came up, Mr. Speaker, in my engagement with some of those people who are on ground, which I would wish to also highlight: the issue of several lands in the part of Lamu that have absentee landlords, huge tracts of land. In 2014, there was title deeds that had been revoked, but somewhat they were returned back. So there are huge tracts of land that are being developed because the landlords are never present in those places. I think this is an area that I want the government needs to look into so that we have development in those areas. Lastly, or as I continue, Mr. Speaker, there is the need for government to also bring into those places the NPRs, the police reservists, to train locals in those places to be able to protect themselves so that we are safe from
the response by government when they have immediate attacks, the locals are able to protect themselves when they are faced with such unexpected attacks as has been happening of recent. Mr. Speaker, as well, there is need for collaborative efforts amongst the leaders as well from that region in Lamu, so that as they work together with the local leadership in that area, they should be able to manage. Because sometimes you see the differences that happens among its leadership, and I would like to quote Martin Luther King once said, as I invoke his powerful words, when he says, "We must live together as brothers or perish together as fools. And in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." In that regard, I would like to implore the leaders who are in Lamu to come together with the security agencies so that we do not have leaders they're having push and pull instead of facing this one enemy that has come to create and destabilize the communities in that part of the region. Therefore, as I will be coming to an end in this, giving my last view on this matter, there is also the need that the locals in that place have been talking about the land demarcation. It has been long overdue, probably part of the things that they are facing right now. I want to also implore the government to support the internally displaced people who are now grouped themselves in schools and provide them with the basic needs and support them. It is very sad that now we have in this country, because of this Yenias Act that happened recently, that now locals are losing a lot because they cannot be able to go to their farms. They go to their farms during the day, they go back home, they go back to the schools where they are in together as villages, taking shelter in institutions that are there. And you find that at night, they claim that animals who are not being now tended go to their farms and destroy their livelihoods. In the bottom line, Mr. Speaker, I want to castigate completely this cowardly act and encourage the government to move in speedily to protect the people in that region and have a bigger collaborative efforts amongst the security teams to be able to protect the people of Lamu, though through those porous borders that are in those places. The government has been able to handle this before. We had terrible attacks in the past. Currently, we've had a relatively long period where there have never been any attacks. But of recent, the insurgency of these puts all of us in a risk. Because when Lamu is in a risk, when Turkana is in a risk of facing terrorist attacks, when North Mandera is in a risk, we are all facing the same risk. And therefore, I want to encourage the government to move with speed, and we need to also get this flawless information as well from the government to all of us to be able to be guided on what is happening towards protecting the Kenyans who are in Lamu and, of course, Garissa and those regions. Last but not least, I want them to stand and, as a leader, stand together in solidarity with all the people of Lamu County, all those that have been affected, even those soldiers whose families have been affected through this Yenias Act, the pain they are going through. I want them to know, as leaders of this nation, we stand by them, we pray with them, but of course, we will face this enemy together as one people. We will overcome for sure. We must then, together as one people in this country, stand together to protect our country. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the chance, and also that we can be able to ventilate together on this matter of national importance that is affecting all of us. And we are sure that as we work together as one country, we have been able to overcome several feats. In this one as well, we will surely overcome. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Very well. To have the first bite on this is Honorable Peter Salasia.
Speaker, as I just want to also to contribute on the motion that the Honorable Member has brought here in front of us, in front of the House. And indeed, I just want to pass my condolence to the family of the young people who lost their lives there in solidarity in keeping peace for this country. And indeed, it's very painful because in most cases, the people that you will find being the victims of such attacks that happens are the young people, more so the people who have just joined the service, maybe not even more than 1 year. And I think it's very also high time that as a ministry, they must also have to give guidance that before they send our young people in those hostile areas, they have also to check on the experience and on how they can handle such a matter. Going to the point, it is also very high. This is because you have not been having such kind of attacks from the Al-Shabaab, but it's only recently when there was opening up, the discussion of opening up of the border between Kenya and Somali, that we have started again receiving such kind of attacks in this country. And I think this is the highest moment that even before the government takes the full charge in terms of opening the boundary between Kenya and Somali to start considering whether it is right, is it right for the country to open up the boundary between Kenya and Somali. And I think if this one persists, it's very high that we have to close that boundary between Kenya and Somali so that we can protect this country until that time when Somali will start experiencing independence and having peace. But unless, if it's not happening like that, we must compel the government to rethink about their decision. Thank you, Speaker.
The Honorable Geoffrey Ruku.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The security of our nation is paramount. We thank the security forces, military and police for the work they have done over the years and the work they have continued to do to protect the internal and external territorial sovereignty or territorial respect of our nation. Mr. Speaker, for the security forces, for them to do this, they require proper equipment and proper training. Proper equipment comes with the proper investment, which comes from our coffers, so that they can have this equipment as well as training also, Mr. Speaker, will also be supported by all Kenyans through the coffers or the taxes which we pay as Kenyans. Any country or any nation where security is not properly taken care of, that country or that nation, Mr. Speaker, will sink, and the nations or the residents of that country will have a lot of problem, and we have seen this within our neighbors. Some of our neighbors, and I don't want to mention the names, have experienced problems from 1990s, 80s up to now because of the failure of security. Whatever has happened in Lamu, in the coast, a few days ago, is something which needs to be looked at, and I am sure we have competent security people who must be working seriously at the moment to ensure that is done. As a House, Mr. Speaker, we must assure them our total support as they put their act in order. I know this country has invested in armored vehicles, and some of these areas, let's ensure the soldiers, the police officers, the paramilitary, the people trained to handle this kind of security situation, are properly given the tools which can be able to protect the security officers. Armored vehicles which we have, let them be deployed in some of these areas. We saw the vehicle which those security officers were using. It was not really an armored vehicle. Let's encourage the managers of our security sector to explore ways of ensuring these areas are manned by armored vehicles. We know they are there. The government has invested in these in the past. Let them be deployed in the most appropriate way. Mr. Speaker, I sit in the Committee of Delegated Registration, which have just forwarded the funding of military, though that agenda has been deliberated, is that we have to do all what it takes. The military which is within our borders and that is outside of our borders must be supported. But at the same time, we must ask ourselves a question. Are we getting value for money? We have seen other military in the other parts of the world, what they do. We also want to encourage the generals which we have in our barracks today, that this country has a lot to take care of. The resources, they're not only going to come from the internal resources, we must also exploit other external resources within our region. This investment, Mr. Speaker, cannot just be investment in fame. Why do we need to spend money to have our forces in Eastern Congo? Why do we need to invest money to our forces in Somalia? That investment must yield returns, and it's upon the generals we have to come up with the strategies on how our investment can yield return through the security they are offering in, across the boundaries. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support this special motion. Thank you.
Very well. The Honorable Gabriel Tongoyo, Chair Security.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice to this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, from the very onset, I want to appreciate my colleague MP for Nanthill for bringing up this very important motion to the House so that members can able to discuss and ventilate on a matter of grave national importance as such as this. Mr. Speaker, as you're aware, I am the chair of Administration and National and Internal Security, and this is a matter that is quite much known to me. And I want to start by passing my condolences to the families and our friends who actually lost their lives defending Kenyans. And at the same time, I want to congratulate our security officers and personnel wherever they are, both those who are operating locally and in the regions, for continuously working day and night to keep Kenya safe. Mr. Speaker, it's true, we had the incidents of insecurity and terrorist attack in Lamu and even some other pockets of northeastern part in the recent past, in a place known as Salama Village in Lamu West. The official data, as it is, we had lost about 22 Kenyans, including 4 KDF and about 7 civilians, those at least who are recorded, and other members of the NPS and our general security agencies. It's good to note that we have been having what we call as multi-agency operation in Lamu, Mboni Forest, for quite some time now, which the government of Kenya has been putting resources to ensure that we manage our borders and the volatile areas, such as Lamu. Mr. Speaker, it is very regrettable that such an incident has happened, but I want to report that ever since the minister in charge for the security, Honorable Kindiki, had visited the area severally, and there is a lot there's a lot of positive improvement. The situation as it is calm for now. We have managed to bring the situation to calm, and our security agencies are on top of things. There's been alleged act of terrorist, Al-Shabaab, but Mr. Speaker, the reports are they could be even a mixture of some local elements that have also taken advantage of the situation. Some elements of criminals that have been having some kind of relation to some land injustices, which has been, of course, attributed to the same. The CS had been visiting that place for quite some time now. Tomorrow, the KDF and the IG will be en route to the same area to assess the situation and give support to the officers. Mr. Speaker, it's true that it's very regrettable to have had the situation and lost even the life of Kenyans. It is a situation that as a committee and even as a country, we have continuously been putting resources. Even in the just ended supplementary 2, we managed to do an additional 200 million to at least facilitate the officers who are operating in that areas. In the supplementary 1, there was also about to have $1 billion put. And even in this financial year, there was almost a tune of 1.6 billion. That is to really able to enable the officers able to carry their work effectively. As we really regret this incident to have happened, we should celebrate that even the situation in the North Rift, which was equally a very sad situation, has really improved and even can be attested by the majority of members who come from such regions. The members of the public has gone back to their farming.
Give Chair 1 minute.
On behalf, I want to assure Kenyans that the government is on top of it. The situation as it is for now is calm. And we, as even the member who brought up the motion, the government is really having a long plan, short and long-term plan, to ensure that the security in the region is really able to be put in place. It's good to report that the President has reported modernization of our police security to a tune of about that 5 billion, so that we can able to acquire new technology, we can able to have even unmanned vehicles, we can able to have armed vehicles, armed RAPs, and even gunshot helicopters, so that our officers can able to respond on time to such instances. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the security is really a very expensive endeavor. I want to challenge the members in this House that we continuously, given our role as members of Parliament, as a House, that one of our responsibilities is to allocate resources, that we continue prioritizing putting resources into our security agencies and operation in the country, so that we can able to have our officers well facilitated and enabled to carry such very delicate operations. So I want to join our members really to condole and condemn the act of terror, but at the same time want to assure all of us that the government is on top of it. Our security officers are working around the clock to ensure that Kenyans are protected and live in peace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Bishop Jackson Kosgei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I read a book by a Chinese philosopher and military strategist, most of us might have read, The Art of War. He said, and I quote, "Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat." End of quote. National security is the ultimate responsibility of the national government. This we cannot overstate it, Mr. Speaker. But I think a time has come that patriotism, every citizen in this country has the responsibility to secure our nation. In most cases, some of the very dangerous threats to our country comes from without and across our borders. But across the same borders are communities of Kenyans who spill over to the neighboring countries. And in some areas, some of these particular communities are fully aware and they know their people, they can identify who are new individuals who can pose for a threat. I am suggesting, and I opine, Mr. Speaker, that the security, internal security, and also our national defense forces should involve communities around and capacitate them to participate on matters security across the border. We have, for example, in the border we share with Tanzania, we have the Maasai community spilling over onto the other side. On the northern part, bordering Ethiopia, we have communities that are living within Kenya and they have relatives on the other side. We have also in Mount Elgon and across western Kenya, they spill over to the neighboring country. One of the issues that have been coming up most of the time is that there has been a cooperation between the citizen and the agencies of security. I wish, as we condole with the families that have lost their loved ones because of these attacks, that we remind ourselves that we need to revisit our strategy and employ better tactics as we manage insecurity in this country. We know Kenya is a free and warm country in terms of relationship and welcoming in the region. I think it is time, Mr. Speaker, that we take a moment and take the issue of security more seriously in order to secure our borders and our communities in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Nyomi Wako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important motion, as I also thank the honorable member who has brought it with a lot of passion to all of us. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a motion that needs our support because of what is currently happening. And we know very well that for the last few weeks, we've lost a lot of, or quite a number of our soldiers who are fighting on our behalf. And it is important for us to know that when we send our troops to these areas that are quite dangerous, they have sacrificed a lot. And again, it takes a lot of passion from them and patriotism.
Order. Honorable member, you are crisscrossing the floor. Just go back. In fact, and you did it twice. Let him go back and just do the correct thing. Let him proceed back, honorable member who's on his feet. Go back and just come back to the house in an orderly way. Please, please. Don't crisscross the house. This is a house of rules, order. It's not a marketplace, please. Thank you, Honorable. You may proceed, Honorable Nyomi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I was saying that our troops, when we send them to some of these areas, it has taken them a lot of courage and sacrifice, and some of them have young families, and they're exposed to a lot of danger. They leave their families when they are not sure of coming back, and as a result of that, many children have been orphaned and young women have been widowed. Mr. Speaker, the only thing that we can now say at the moment is to condone with the families that are affected and also request the government to give them all the necessary support that these families need. Number one, they are psychologically traumatized, and so they need some counseling and better support. And even when we send them, special grants should be put aside so that in case of anything, the families can be attended to urgently. And as we release them, the type of equipments that are used, Mr. Speaker, sir, especially the vehicles that they use. You know, your enemies always look at your weak areas, and they capitalize on that. And of late, they have realized that even the vehicles that our troops use are not maybe strong enough. And so, majority of them have lost their lives while they are going to serve Kenyans or to give service to where they are. And so we should be ready. I'm glad that the chairman has reported that in this budget and in all our budgets, they have been considered. But it is my prayer that even going forward, enough budget will be set aside so that we can be able to take care of our soldiers. Mr. Speaker, Article 27 says every person has equal right before the law and have equal opportunity, meaning that even the soldiers have equal right to life and they need to be protected. As they protect the lives of others, they are also supposed to be protected. And that is the responsibility of our government, and it is high time that Kenyans change their tactics and see how best we can protect our troops within and without the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, currently the families suffer in different ways. Special consideration should be done for the families, and especially the young women who are widowed and the orphans who are left behind by these heroes. I support. Thank you.
Honorable Tindi Mwale.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, pia mimi nachangia katika hii mada ya ukosefu wa usalama katika Lamu County. Bwana Spika, utapata ya kwamba wakati hakuna usalama katika eneo lolote, tutapata ya kwamba ni wamama, watoto na vijana ambao wanateseka zaidi. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, naanza na kushukuru mwenzangu ambaye ni mbunge kutoka eneo la Lamu kwa kuleta hii mada na hii mswada ya kuongelelea maneno ya usalama katika kaunti yetu ya Lamu. Na sio Lamu peke yake Bwana Spika, usalama haupo katika nchi ya Kenya. Kuna maeneo mengi katika nchi yetu ya Kenya ambayo imeonekana ya kwamba watu wanateseka, wengine wanapoteza maisha, wengine hata wananajisiwa.
Yes, what's your point of order?
I have heard my colleague say that this motion was brought by a member of parliament from Lamu. I think it needs to be corrected that I'm not a member of parliament from Lamu. I'm the member of parliament from Nandi Hills. So, yes, so...
You may proceed, Honorable Tindi.
Nilimaanisha Nandi, ni vile yeye alisikia Lamu. Sorry, lakini sasa nimerudia, ni mbunge kutoka Nandi County. Asante sana kwa kurekebisha haya. Bwana Spika, nikiendelea, utapata ya kwamba kwa sisi kupata ya kwamba uchumi unaendelea katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, lazima tuimarishe maneno ya usalama. Kwa sababu usalama kama haupo, hata shule wanafunzi hawawezi enda, wanabiashara hawawezi fanya biashara. Utapata mambo mengi yanazungukwa na usalama ambao unafaa uzingatiwe na serikali. Bwana Spika, utapata tuko na vifaa katika idara yetu ya polisi, tuko na vifaa katika idara yetu ya jeshi. Hizo vifaa za vita zimenunuliwa na pesa ushuru ya wananchi. Kwa nini Bwana Spika, hizo vifaa zisitolewe ziende huko Lamu ama mahali popote Kenya ambapo kuko na insecurity ile ukosefu wa usalama,
hizo vifaa zitumike kulinda hao wananchi ambao wanalipa ushuru, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, tuko na wanajeshi wa Kenya ambao wamepelekwa kulinda huko Kongo. Tumeona juzi kwa vyombo za habari, serikali ya Kongo ambayo inaongozwa na Rais Tshisekedi hawataki hao wanajeshi wakuwe huko Kongo. Mbona usirudishe wanajeshi wa Kenya tuwatume hapa Lamu walinde wananchi wa Kenya na watulindie usalama? Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, mimi naunga mkono ya kwamba usalama katika kaunti ya Lamu uzingatiwe, na mahali popote ambapo hakuna usalama katika nchi yetu ya Kenya iangaliwe ya kwamba usalama unanawiri, na pia wananchi waishi wakijua kwamba tuko na vijana wetu, tuko na wanajeshi na polisi ambao wamepewa ile itikadi ya kulinda maisha na vifaa na kila kitu ambayo iko katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Kwa hayo machache, Bwana Spika, mimi naunga mkono hiyo mswada. Asante sana.
Very well. The Honorable Member for Wajir South, Mohammed Ado.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. From the onset, I would like to send my heartfelt condolences to the families of our gallant soldiers who died while defending our land. This menace of Al-Shabaab, the armed groups that are wreaking havoc not just in Lamu, but also in northeastern Kenya, where we've seen attacks in Mandera, Wajir, and Garissa counties in the past few weeks. This is the work of not just Al-Shabaab fighters who have crossed over from Somalia, but also homegrown elements who are assisting them in traversing the terrain, which they know very little about. And there's a need for concerted effort by not just the government, but also from the public to fight these people once and for all. Because if they get a foothold in our country, we are going to see much more brazen attacks that are going to jeopardize the peace and security that we so much cherish in this country. And Mr. Speaker, we are sitting on a ticking time bomb when you look at the thousands of young people in those marginal areas where this group is now operating in. Talking about places like Lamu, Mandera, Garissa, Wajir. And their target is to recruit as many of our young people as possible in their campaign of violence. And if we don't do something about that, then it is going to be to our detriment. And Mr. Speaker, so far, we've had the National Police Reservists at the forefront of defending this country. They are people who've been chosen because of their knowledge of the terrain and the people and the language. And while some of them have been armed, others have not been armed, which makes them like sitting ducks when it comes to fighting this group effectively. And there is a need to remunerate them better than they are right now, because we've seen, and particularly in my constituency, whenever they receive their remuneration, sometimes it passes 3 months before they are given their dues, they get deductions from senior police officers. And that is unacceptable. We need to give them proper uniform, proper training, and properly remunerate them so that they form the first line of defense to ensure that we do not get these attacks going forward. And Mr. Speaker, no amount of conventional warfare will work against this group. In the course of doing journalism over the past 25 years, I've covered groups like Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. And these people are not only smooth and far-reaching, but also very difficult to detect. They make their entry even before their presence in a place is known. And we should not look at them like any other security threat. We are facing an existential threat, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I do not agree with those who are arguing that the Somali-Kenya border should not be opened as planned by the government because these criminal elements are not passing through official crossings, which gives our gallant forces the chance to identify those who are coming to Kenya for good and those who are coming to Kenya to try and harm us. I would like at this point to thank our security forces who have so far been very, very steadfast in fighting these groups. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Mugwen, Honourable Joseph Lelmengit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to join, support the motion of adjournment to discuss insecurity in Lamu and the northeastern part of Kenya, put forward by the Honourable Member for Nandi Hills, Honourable Bernard Kitur. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, I would like to pass my message of condolence to the families affected, to the young souls that were lost in this attack. Secondly, I would like, in the movie that I saw, I thought this only happens in movies, Mr. Speaker, but this is real life and there are real issues. As we grow, we see them in reality. There is a movie, it's called We Were Soldiers. And these commandants, one of the commandants, before they went to war, he promised his platoon that I will be the first to touch the ground and I'll be the last to leave the place, the scene. And he would not leave any soldier behind. The kind of dedication, the kind of sacrifice, the kind of endurance that these soldiers passed through is enormous. And the reason why they swore after their training and in their service, they swore that they would protect this nation, whatever may, at whatever the cost. We should also, as a government, be true to the same word and swear or take care of their welfare, protect them. For example, in the recent event that occurred, I tend to believe that we should have had better machines which can detect landmines with the current technology that we have at the moment, give them more sophisticated weapons so that they can help them fight the Al-Shabaab within the Lamu region. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, Lamu region, there is a big chunk of forest, like the Bohoni. I think, so as long as the Bohoni forest exists, we will still lose our people, we will lose our soldiers. I want to encourage the government, as part of the income generating activity, to clear that forest in Lamu, Mr. Speaker, so that we can even use the same money to plow back to the economy of this country. Once that forest is cleared, at least we can have a peaceful area within Lamu region. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, there are several cases of land injustices within Lamu region. Maybe we call upon the NLC to come together, the government to help resettle those people because they take advantage and bring in those vices. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, during deployment, as part of the welfare of this, taking care of the welfare of these soldiers, deployment, we have to have experienced soldiers to lead the new recruits so that with the experience they have, they could easily prevent such issues from occurring. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we need to have social support desks for these soldiers. They go through serious frustrations with the war, the kind of deaths they experience. We need to have them. They undergo serious frustrations and even take care of their families. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, on the compensation issues, we need to have a proper package for compensations for soldiers whenever we experience a number of deaths. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, I would want also to question the employment criteria of our NIS. Every time NIS has been accused, allegedly, for employing children from rich families. How can you send rich kids to do the security issues? They can't stay at night protecting the poor people. So I would want to encourage and advise so that next time they follow the right procedures in employing these security forces for intelligence reasons. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Very well. Next to speak on this is the Honorable Yusuf Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. This issue today is a weighty issue, an issue that we need to discuss seriously. Al-Shabaab has been with us. We know the damage it caused to this country. We can remember vividly what happened in Westgate, Garissa University, and so many other places. So many people, young people, promising, have lost their life due to Al-Shabaab. Today, as we speak, it is not only about Lamu County that are at risk. If you ask me, the whole of in Nairobi or all over in Kenya, we have a problem in our hand. But how do we prevent this issue, especially the Al-Shabaabs coming in and waging a war in our own homeland? What we need to do is the following. For me, I believe a home ground solution is the only way to detect, to avert, and to prevent this Al-Shabaab menace. If we can remember very well, after the Garissa University, the government of Kenya decided to have a different approach on how they used to deal with Al-Shabaab before, by remunerating, employing NBRs and a people called by the name Mawisley, who are always on the forefront of all the border areas. These people were initially being remunerated well, paid well, but I don't know what happened recently. Things changed. Those people decided to leave those areas. And we are experiencing Al-Shabaab menace all over. In Mandera, in Wajir, in Garissa, in Lamu, and who knows where next. I want us to visualize and think of what happened during those times. Are we ready for the tragedies that happened during those times? No. If no, what this government needs to do is to remunerate, motivate, first the first line of defense, which are NPRs, two, the special forces who are doing also great job in our borders. The special forces initially were given extra allowances, but for the last 10 months, those allowances were not paid, according to the information we have from the ground. So what comes out of that? Exit from the security side. If a person is not motivated, a person who is defending you, who is defending this country, who is sleeping outside every night because only to defend and secure this country is not motivated well, then you can imagine what else can we invest in this country. Security should have been the first thing. For a country to be secure, you must invest in the security agencies, you must invest in all other that comes with it. So as we must have a secure border. I want to echo my brother here, Honorable Ado. Some people are saying the borders should not be open. The borders should be opened for the youth of those areas who could have been recruited by the Al-Shabaabs to get jobs. And the security officers shall be remunerated well, so that they are also motivated and they can secure our borders. For that few remarks, I support the motion. Thank you.
Very well. Let's have the Honorable Augustine Mwafrika Roysambu.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I am a firm believer that Al-Shabaab, or the attackers, they can never be ahead of the government. No matter how sophisticated weapons they may have, I believe that there is no way they can be ahead of the government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a grave matter. We understand that villagers in Lamu are fleeing because of the attacks. Most of the members here have talked about the armored vehicles. That is okay, and I support that. But I would like to make an additional call to our security agents and the government about coming up with a detector of the weapons they are using, the IEDs, because there are two common ways. The tactics they are using, I have identified to be two commonly ones. That is, either the assailants are armed or by use of the IEDs. So if the government or our security agents can come up with a detector, it will be very good, because before they drive, our security agents drives within those areas. First of all, they use the detectors to know if there are any hidden those IEDs. That would be easy, Mr. Speaker. So I make a call that the government or our security agents to come up with a detector. Mr. Speaker, here we may talk about those who have been killed, but there are so many others who have been left injured. I would like to request the government also to take care of the injured. Most of the injured are the innocent Kenyans. Innocent Kenyans who probably have nothing to do with that fight. So innocent, and they have been left injured. We are requesting the government to take care of them. And Mr. Speaker, I'm also supporting those who are making a call for our soldiers in Congo to be withdrawn, to be brought back to Kenya, so that they can be deployed within those areas. Because it is not right that some of our areas, that is mostly Lamu and Garissa, they had an attack, and we have offered a support to our neighbor country. Mr. Speaker, before we offer that support, we need to be safe back here in our country. So it doesn't matter, even if those soldiers who have been deployed to Congo if they are brought back and they are deployed to Lamu, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter, even if it means the ratio of 1:10, provided, Mr. Speaker, we don't hear any more attacks within those areas, because we can only be able to progress when our country is peaceful. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
The Honorable Pamela Njoki-Njeru.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, as much as we thank the government for the credible job being done matters security in our nation, I wish to reiterate that our security should not be compromised whatsoever. Honorable Speaker, as a member of Embu County and the Embu County Women Representative, and on behalf of the Embu community, I wish to convey my sincere condolences to the community of Lamu following the recent attacks that has led to loss of lives.
Pamela Njoki-Njeru, as much as possible, speak on this matter. Don't read a speech.
Yes,
proceed.
Sir. Thank you, Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I was in the line of giving my condolences on behalf of the Embu community following the recent attacks. Honorable Speaker, during the recent attacks in Lamu by the suspected gangs and terror attacks that has led to loss of lives and people being homeless and a lot of pain from women to children, Honorable Speaker, I wish to state that it is the high time the government equipped the KDF forces and other security agencies with the best machineries and ammunitions available so that indeed our country can remain safe. Honorable Speaker, the school-going children are expected to go back from midterm next week, from 3rd of July, and already in the areas of Lamu, we already know that they don't have anywhere to stay, they cannot go back to school. Honorable Speaker, I wish to state that the government should work and act in speed so that at least this matter can be resolved as fast as it can be done. In Salama and Juhud villages, we have had reports of loss of lives and even people who have already been pained enough and have been left homeless. Honorable Speaker, I wish to state that the government should move in as much as possible with a lot of speed and ensure that we, the people of Kenya, the people of Lamu, can stay in peace. As I conclude, Honorable Speaker, I wish to state that the government should explore the strategy of winners. Honorable Speaker, when exploring the secret of winners by the government should know that the life strategy matters most in the approach to circumstances and situations for us to be a winner or a champion. Honorable Speaker, the government needs to stay in the mood of lions. The mood of lions is the mood for winners. Honorable Speaker, I support. Thank you.
The Honorable Joseph Oyula Butula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also add my voice to these insecurity issues. Mr. Speaker, may I start by sending my condolences to the families of the young officers who were killed in the recent attack in Lamu. Mr. Speaker, in fact, one of the officers who passed on comes from my constituency. He was a young officer, who was just around 25 years of age, and we just lost him through this terrorism. Mr. Speaker, it's a high time that the government came up with a way of wiping out this insecurity in these areas. Lamu was once a good place to visit, but these days, Lamu has deteriorated alongside Mandera, Garissa, Wajir. Mr. Speaker, this having happened through landmines, I want to support what one honorable member said, that there should be a detector. Whenever these vehicles carrying soldiers are ahead, there should be a vehicle that can identify or detect some of these landmines, which end up harming our young officers. Mr. Speaker, the time is ripe now for the government to take decisive action to make sure that we do not lose many officers as it has been in the past. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion, and I will urge the government to take it seriously to ensure that in future our armed officers are properly taken care of. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I would also want to ask the government to move very fast in releasing compensation to the families of the deceased. The families of the deceased are left in a very awkward situation with a lot of pain. So anything that can soften them up should be released as soon as possible. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you again and thank the honorable member who brought this motion for discussion in this House. Let us ask the government to act promptly. Thank you.
Very well. The Honorable Abdi Ali Ijara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to contribute in this adjournment motion of discussing insecurity issues in Lamu County and the entire Northeastern, more particularly Garissa County, from the constituency I represent. First and foremost, I want to send my condolences on behalf of Ijara constituency, the families who lost their loved ones, the KDF's forces. Mr. Speaker, as I stand here, Ijara constituency, we have lost one KDF officer who was based in Ijara constituency because of this attack that happened in Handaro location. The name of that officer is called Saddam Abdullah. He comes from a humble family in a place called Hara in Masalani division. Also, one of the officer who got injured is from Ijara constituency in the recent Lamu attack by the name Abdurrahman Ahmed Bashir. As you know that this Al-Shabaab is a very dangerous terrorist organization, and if you just see it, the entire northern Kenya, we are lagged behind in terms of development, including even we don't have basic things like roads, electricity, network. If I just take a clear example in Ijara constituency, we don't have networks in places like Handaro, El Kambere, Gedulun, and those are areas which are near to the Lamu, to the Boni forest, and that is where they always hide these Al-Shabaabs. And because of that, Ijara constituency and the entire northern counties, they don't access the basic NGOs. Those NGOs, they don't access our areas just because of a narrative called insecurity. So by improving the security situation, we will be able to have more NGOs coming to support our communities, I mean the cross-border NGOs. Going forward, the solution I request or I urge the government to do is equipping of more NPRs. If you see most of our NPRs, they don't have motivation. They don't get proper motivation. They only earn 5,000 a month. And that 5,000, it only comes after 2 months. There's delay of salaries. So because of that, they are not motivated. Also, the other challenges the NPRs are facing is because of the identification. You will see an NPR which has the uniform of our police working. And in the process, they might meet with the KDF, our KDF forces, and in the process, they might even, the KDF even, they beat our NPRs, just because they don't have an identification tags to show that these are genuine NPRs. And just because of that, these NPRs are really exposed to that. Even Al-Shabaabs, if you see our area, a place called in Sangole, we have 8 NPRs who are earning salaries for the last 1 year, but they don't have guns. And these Al-Shabaab, they know that these are the people who are NPRs. The other solution that I want the government to take is to have what's called organized and legalized local militia by the name Mawisley. This is a homegrown solution that will help our people. Our people, more particularly Jara people, are ready to defend their nation, their land, so further the government support. Because of that, I support this motion. Thank you.
Did you say you also have a militia? Next to speak on this is Honorable Francis Sigei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity for me to also add my voice on this national issue, which is dear to me. Having worked in this system for a very long time, I really feel passionate about this subject matter. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to thank the mover of this motion, Mheshimiwa Honorable Bernard Kitur, Nandi Hills, for articulating this issue very clearly. I want to thank him because it's a national issue and he has come out to really tell the world that we need to talk about this issue. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I want to also send my condolences to the families and the soldiers who have lost life during this operation. Mr. Speaker, I've been watching on the TV the kind of agony which our people are facing in Lamu. People have been displaced. And yesterday I was watching them being returned to the original places. I'm not even sure whether those places are safe now to go back to. But Mr. Speaker, I want to express my sympathy on this particular issue. Mr. Speaker, I am a member of our National Administration and Internal Security, and I want to support my chairman. And Mr. Speaker, if my chairman has spoken on several issues, I really wouldn't like to go through what he has said. But I want to support him, that we in the committee are really supporting our security forces. And in the recent budgetary process, we were able to enhance their finances. Mr. Speaker, but I want to speak here today as a member of Soti constituency. Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, we buried a young man who was working with KDF by name Justus Kipkorir To, a very young soul. And Mr. Speaker, it was a very sad moment to have lost this young man who left a widow, a very young widow. And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I would like to support whatever my colleagues have said, that we need to look at the compensation to these lost souls. Mr. Speaker, a lot of issues came out during that funeral. One, and which people are asking me, and I want to say this, is about the criteria which the system use to identify officers who are going to this battlefront. This young man, Mr. Speaker, only joined the service in 2021. And Mr. Speaker, people are expressing their doubts whether these people are experienced enough to go and be in the forefront. People are also asking me hard questions. One was about the kind of living conditions in which our officers are living. And Mr. Speaker, we are going to discuss this in our committee. As a member of the committee, I would like to discuss this issue. But Mr. Speaker, I want to mention one person who has done a very good job in this government. And this is the CS Administration and National Security, Professor Kindiki Kindure. I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that he has been able to stop the wanton destruction of lives in the North Rift, and that we are now reporting peaceful areas of the Rift Valley, the northern part of our country. And I want to thank him for doing this. We also I want to say that we in the committee are advocating also for modernization of whatever equipment our officers are using. And
very well, you have had your bite, and I want to encourage the members to be as brief as possible to allow all the members have a bite on this. Let's have Honorable Dido Raso.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on onset, I want to thank Honorable Bernard from Nandi Hills for this special motion. Honorable Speaker, some of our colleagues are saying, let us return forces from the African Union mission in Congo, in Somalia, and all that. Those forces should remain where they are. Terrorism is the weapon of the weak against the strong. And the issue of planting IEDs, attacking isolated villages sporadically, is just showing the weakness of Al-Shabaab. Honorable Speaker, you may wish to know that Al-Shabaab is being chased out of Somalia. They are defeated, they are on the run. So as Kenya, we should not give them the sanctuary. So far, over the last 2 months, we have lost close to 21 persons, 10 KDF, 5 KPR, and 5 civilians. That is not a small number by any means. For that reason, I want to say that the Kenyan people, because terrorism is about targeting the people when they are vulnerable. And a good example is the attack on Garissa University in 2015. So for that reason, our people must rise up, particularly the people of the North. We should not just leave it to the security forces to handle these things. By providing intelligence to government, by volunteering where to picket, by actually putting more of our people, particularly those elders, those imams who can talk to the youth. The issue of Al-Shabaab actually rides on radicalization. So long as we don't address the issue of radicalization and people are helping this particular thing to thrive, then we may continue to face this menace. Honorable Speaker, I want to join Honorable Sigei saying that Professor Kindiki is doing a good job. What we want to ask the government, particularly on the side of mobility for our police, because we are seeing MRAPs being used, that is mine action vehicles, mine plated. We have APCs. I think we want to have more of that so that our soldiers are not on soft-skin land cruisers and lorries where they can easily be targeted with IEDs. There are those who are saying, let us use gadgets to pick out the IEDs. It may be quite difficult at this point in time. What is important is vigilance, a rapid changeover of our soldiers, so that those who have finished 6 months in those operational areas can be relieved, so that at every point in time, we have fresh boots on the ground. Honorable Speaker, the attacks in northeast Kenya and coast comes at a time where the CS defense is Aden Duale, NIS Director General is Nuruddin Haji, CID Director is Amin Mohamed, DIG Nur Gabo, DMI Major General Burje. These are among the most qualified people who I think Al-Shabaab have made a big mistake that the people of the north, actually I think they are up to the task. I call on these honorable men that we count on them. We count on their expertise for them to help Kenya in the hour of need. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. Honorable Farah.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I also wish to weigh on this issue. It's very close to our hearts. And we know the problem, those of us who come from the north and the contiguous districts of Lamu and Tana River. As a matter of fact, my two very good young men here, I don't know what I should call them my sons because they're all younger than my, except the first one is older than my son. Honorable Yaqub and Honorable Ali of Ijara. They have a very tough task right now, just navigating through their constituencies to be able to give attention to their constituencies and see how they can deliver development. They literally have to go with a convoy of security men and women. Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy. I've had Sigei. Sigei was a DC in Garissa when we were going through a similar problems many years back in the 90s. And we did a fantastic job then. The manner in which you deal with these people has got to be very specialized, and Colonel Russell will tell you that. You don't use a conventional force. When you say bring up back our forces, this is not numbers. They go in small numbers of 5, 4, 6, and they carry out these problems. They don't go in thousands. They don't face the forces in a frontal attack. They hide. The best way to deal with them, and I want my colleagues also to support me on this, is for us, first of all, to create our own Ma'usley, which is our own KPR. And our own KPR is in a position to track them and smoke them out of wherever they go in. In my constituency now, the Honorable Yaqub will tell you that there's nobody there. There's not a single Al-Shabaab in my constituency. We flush them out. And I spend my own resources to send those young men to follow them on foot and track them. And just the other day, they tried to attack outside Hame, and you heard what happened to them. 4 of them were brought down. These 2 young men get the same support, and we put in resources into that and pay the KPRs better than we do now. Because our KPR do not get paid anything. They get paid a very paltry 5,000 shillings a month, and that does not even come for 6 months, 7 months sometimes in a row. If we put a little bit of more resources into that, we give them a little bit of a more firepower in that, and we follow them up also with provisions, food, bullets, and the rest of them, we can finish this at the minimum cost, and we can literally smoke them out, flush them out, and get rid of them. A young man who grew up in the lake region or grew up in the mountain region, who went and trained in Kiganjo and comes out there as a police officer, and you tell him to track such hardened criminals, you are sentencing them to death sentence. It is not fair. It's not fair at all for these young people to be sent after these hardened, seasoned, very, crooked guys, because they will just ambush. And they will put the IEDs everywhere they can. And the IEDs have the capacity to be put in underground there. I almost lost my life when I was campaigning last time because there was an attempt on that. And they hide somewhere in the bushes there and blow up whenever the vehicle passes on that place. But if they were being chased on foot by people who know them, I don't know if you have a Pokot member of parliament in here. We could also do with a few members of the Pokot community also in the security forces, the Turkana, and what do you call and some of those people who have had a similar situation like ours. We've chased them and we smoked them out, the Borans, the Somalis. These are the people, give me just a few more minutes, 2 more minutes. These are the people who basically know how to deal with that. This is not a conventional force. Homegrown, you need to get people who understand the way they work and put a little bit of resources into those people. We'll flush them out. They'll get rid of them all. You don't need any sophisticated military mechanism and the rest of it. We just need to be smart. So I'm...
No, thank you. I've had your bite. Members have been here, senior. So let me have Honorable Jackson Lekumontori, Samburu, yes. He's also a person from those areas. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also want to support this motion. Honorable Speaker, this issue has been there for quite some time, and we have lost many of our soldiers over a period of time. And Honorable Speaker, Al-Shabaab can be from outside as well as from within. These are young people from all over Kenya. Recently, Honorable Speaker, I was surprised some people who are caught up by the military personnel coming from Samburu even. There are even those from those areas. And I think, Honorable Speaker, sometimes maybe we get the information from the outside world that the Al-Shabaabs are going to attack somewhere. And I think even our military intelligence, Mr. Speaker, they need really to be empowered because these guys are hitting within. And if you look at the issue of Lamu, Mr. Speaker, we lost so many people. And if you see the situation currently in Lamu, it is a pathetic one. People are not sleeping. In fact, yesterday I was watching from the television that the people are really worried when it comes to night. They have to go and sleep in schools. And I think, Mr. Speaker, it is very important. And when we are discussing these issues, because if Lamu is not safe, nobody is safe, Mr. Speaker. And the Al-Shabaab menace, unless the government is coming strongly to deal with this issue, Mr. Speaker, I think it is very important for us to support the government, the military personnel, so that we can have peace within our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the chance.
Very well. 2 minutes. Let's give to Honorable Paul Biego.
Please, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And first and foremost, I must congratulate my brother who brought this motion, Honorable Kitur, because as much as how he's coming from the North Rift, he has brought an issue of national importance. Mr. Speaker, sir, insecurity in the entire northeastern, especially Lamu, has become something of our concern. And I also echo the sentiments made by earlier members that we need to have gadgets which detect the IEDs. We also need to equip our guards or our security personnel with armored vehicles. And taking into consideration that these children of our parents, and they are needed in society, Mr. Speaker, sir. Their parents also and their children and families need them, so it's very important for us to give them proper ammunition. I would also like to comment on the government for the initiative which they put forward, like forming the task force, the Marende task force, of course, which was addressing the issue of welfare, and again on the issue on financial independence. Mr. Speaker, sir, I must commend the government for that. And I also take this opportunity to thank all members who have actually put their point across the same way I'm doing. So I support. Thank you.
Finally, the Honorable Jamatia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to join my fellow members who have spoken before me and give credit to the mover of the motion. And I also want to say that it is high time for Kenya to take up this challenge, especially the government, and take responsibility on this matter of Al-Shabaab. Honorable Farah alluded before that there are better ways to deal with this matter, which is mainly homegrown. I want to say I have also been having the same problems from my home, Baringo, on issues of bandits. And it is very clear that when the community take up this matter, it is easily dealt with, and it can be, taken by force, because they understand these people. These are criminals that most likely grew in the same environment. And I want to also say, for our KDF, as much as they are doing a lot, we need to support them through the intelligence information and act as fast as possible to avert the terror attacks that they are always planning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honorable members, let's be upstanding. And the time being 7:01 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, 4th July 2023 at 2:30 p.m.